Oh, there we go. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let me see one more time. Share my screen. All the controls kind of moved around on Zoom. So WordPress news and events is really, again, like this time of year especially, we've just gone, if you're really new to WordPress, go back to our last month's recording episode because they just dropped a big WordPress release. There's some whole delay and all that kind of stuff. So things are kind of settling based on that. I'd say the dust has settled a bit. So really the only two big things. One is very recently, just about a week or so ago, they wrapped up WordCamp Europe in Kraków, land of my people in Poland. The cool thing though is whenever they do these major WordCamps, the nice thing is if you can't attend, as we were talking about earlier, you generally can at least rewatch the recordings and session slides in some case. So there's two ways to do that. You can either go to the WordPress YouTube channel, in which case you'll find the videos, or I found, and again, this may not be around forever, so this is just kind of FYI for people. If you go to the europe.wordcamp.org, maybe I'll put this in the chat when Peter's given his thing. In here, the nice thing too is you can actually see the schedule for each day. And many of the presenters, not all, but I'd say most of the ones I've clicked on at least, have included their slides for download. So that's kind of a nice thing too. So I sometimes, to be honest, I kind of read the slides first because I can read quicker than I can watch a YouTube thing. So check it out. Again, they're all free. Some good sessions, kind of back to a little bit what you were saying, Peter, too. For me, sometimes, I don't know, some of these, especially the big word camps, they try to please everybody. So they're pretty broad. There's things there for agencies, experts. I kind of feel like if I was a beginner, I'm not sure. To me, it feels like this one is a bit light on beginner stuff or even advanced beginner. But AI was the big buzzword, so I guess that's something for everyone. So it's, look through it. Again, it's free if you didn't attend, and just check out topics of interest. I haven't had a chance to look at any of them yet. There's nothing I can particularly recommend to anyone. Has anyone watched any of these yet, or probably not yet? Like I said, I think they just released the slides recently, so I will put the link to this in the chat so everyone can take a look whenever you wish. And the only other piece of kind of news, it didn't really affect me, but I know Sue especially likes to bring up like security related things. So if you look at this is carried on a couple of websites, but the repository is one that Peter um, uh, showed me is a really great source for WordPress news. But there is apparently a big security breach for opt-in Monster. If everyone's still using that plugin for any SEO things, so it sounds like a lot of it was more on the back end of their servers, but there are some potential issues. So I would say if you're using that plugin on a site, hopefully you've been contacted by Awesome Motive, I guess is the creator of that, or a company who supports that. So just be careful. Probably a good time to run some malware checks, things like that. So that's all I know about this one. I don't know if anyone uses Opt-in Monster or has heard anything else about this one.
I have an Awesome Motive is a major player in WordPress with plugins and the ones that they've made and the most of them that they've purchased and put under their umbrella. So this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it sounds like even that alone, Opt-in Monster alone, 1.2 million sites. So this could be a big one. I haven't used. I've seen sites with Opt-in Monster. I kind of never liked it because the free version just had so much
Yeah,
stuff it threw into the admin dashboard that I wasn't really that interested in continuing to use it. So
it's funny. The Optin Monster plugin, it also reminds me of the thing that I just forgot about. There's a slide revolution plugin, and this is all like the the era of WordPress when you had Theme Forest and you had all the stuff where people were buying a lot of these things on these sites, and some of these became incredibly huge. But even so, the Slider Revolution, which is on still on so many sites, and there's animation and slides and this kind of stuff, and there's so many better things, but it still exists. And all it had a security breach just recently too. So there's some big deals with some of these. I don't know if it's just because they're older and they kind of
it's the
got
popular ones. And
yeah.
there was a whole thing
But
recently. You can read that too. I think there's a whole post from Matt Mullenweg at WordPress.org about AI also being a big, unfortunately, for good and bad, people using AI to find new breaches too. So
That's right.
Anyway,
That's
if
right.
you have
Well,
opt-in monster, something to be aware of. And I closed my slides before I give you your introduction, Peter. So tool or tip,
yeah, I got it. And
like
you
if you
just
have
reminded me
anything.
something that I just wanted to look up that relates exactly to what you said with AI, because there is a person who just, and this is not the tool or tip. Let me share the screen. Uh, that screen. This WP Brigade is related to what you just said, where I can't remember, I don't remember his name. I'm sure he's here in the about. Um, but used AI to check for security issues on plugins, and now is kind of building a mechanism to do that. And then the new thing that happened with plugins in the news is now there'll be a release period of at least 24 hours, I think, of when a plugin gets released, but only to a small group that are then going to do the security checks before that. And this is for not one getting accepted into the repository. These are plugins that you can get from WordPress.org, but they will the updates will sit in like a 24-hour holding pattern um, to check for security issues. So there's a lot of things going on. So our website, Hartford WordPress, I meant to get it updated for today. I did not. I will do that in the next few days. So these are some previous things. The only reason I'm showing this is because I'm going to use this as an example of what is my tip or tool of the week. In this case, it's something called uh, tools.webagencyhero.com. I will put that in the chat. If I can find the chat. I'll do it after I do this. Too many windows open. But what it is a pretty comprehensive scan of a website. We're always there's all kinds of tools for this, but this one's pretty interesting. And while it states this for web agencies, because clearly a web agency that has a number of websites they're looking at, anything that can help them go through their multiple sites and check on things. And we have a few folks who manage more than one website here, but anybody can use this. This is a free tool out there. There's no paywall, there's no anything. So it's just at this address, tools.webagencyhero.com. If I take this URL of our site and I drop this into the quick scan, this is right on the home page, run the scan, it's going to do a scan, and I don't pretend that the Hartford WP is like perfectly locked down, although I can show you some things maybe later to like even fix some of the things that happens in this scan. But I'll try to zoom in a little bit, make it easier. But the scan goes through, and then it gives a pretty comprehensive report about your website, and then finds issues. Email, we have no email set up on that website, so we're missing some things that you would have if you were sending email. What's interesting is it does recognize, okay, this is a WordPress site. It's going to give some feedback about that site. What can it see? Oh, it's WordPress 7.0, which is visible. There's sometimes security things you'll want to do to kind of hide some of this stuff so that some of the bad actors out there don't take advantage of things. It's giving a little detail, and then you even get under that section, you get an opportunity to dig even deeper specifically to WordPress. So this is a pretty cool tool for free to be able to just say, give me a health check on my website. So whenever we find things like this, it's kind of like a neat little thing. We could dig deeper into any one of these topics. When you look at the different things here, domain inspector, email, any one of these could be an entire meetup when we get into, what it means to set up email correctly. And, we were talking about security so much, the security around any website can get, it's an area of specialization. We have plugins that help us with a lot of things, but again, anything that just says, oh, wait a minute, I got something that I need to fix. Any tools that help us get to that pretty quickly are good things to have in our toolkit. So I'll drop the link in the chat. But yeah, I thought this one was a pretty interesting, thing, tips on what to fix. Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive tool.
Neat. Yeah, I put the link to it already in the
I will
chat,
do that.
Peter. All right. Well, let's talk about once you stop sharing, and I'm just going to do real quick. Uh, it's there. You should be able to unmute yourself, Peter. So our topic tonight, or I should say, our topics for the summer, we kind of call it the summer school series. I think we started this 2 years ago ish. And generally, it's kind of wide open in terms of things we cover. Sometimes we've covered people's websites if they want to have something reviewed. Sometimes just topics. AI, I think, was our big thing last year, believe it or not. I'm sure there's still more AI stuff. This is something Peter and I don't normally. So if you look at our regular meetups, we tend to do at least focused around a topic pretty much. So this one's a little bit less structured, I would say. But what I would suggest, and Peter and I don't even like practice our thing tonight, but I was thinking maybe what we can do is maybe we can do like a half hour each. Peter, you and I have something. I think you're gonna do more AI stuff. Is that kind of what your focus was like?
Yeah, I can bounce around all kinds of things,
Okay.
and I would love to see questions in there. We,
Yeah.
we we both respond really well to when somebody has a specific question, and for example, Mandy with the concern about checking old plugins and things
Yeah.
like that.
So we'll
So
talk about that. So what I'm going to try to do is maybe if I can start first, Peter, because I saw we have a bunch of
yep,
first timers kind of sign up as well too. So,
yep,
and a lot of people seem to sign up saying that they don't have a lot of experience with WordPress. So I thought the topic I would use, we talked about this before several times, is I think one of the biggest hurdles for new people starting WordPress is really just getting started. Meaning in the past, like Peter said, he started with WordPress 2.0. I don't know, I don't remember which version I started with, but it was if you just wanted to play with WordPress and figure out what is this thing, because WordPress can be complicated. There's no lie, there's no doubt behind that. But just even setting something up to learn it to begin with was also complicated. So adding complication upon complication. These days, luckily, things are much simpler. So I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to try to keep to like 20 minutes or so you have time at the end, and definitely ask questions as I'm doing it. I'm going to show you a tool that you can use on your computer to create and run a WordPress site or sites, multiple sites, easily, quickly, best of all, free. And you don't even need hosting. You don't need to buy a domain, anything like that. Again, this is more for starting up a site, a sandbox. We'll talk about some different use cases you can have for this. So no, Jetpack's a plugin. So the tool, and there's a couple of tools. So let me just share my screen real quick. I'll show. We've talked about one before. So in the past, I would say, well, let me talk about way back in the past. The way that you would do this, as I said, it was more complicated. You would have to install a series of technologies on your computer, or they sometimes get bundled together into something called like LAMP or WAMP, which is like Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. But now there are a couple of ways to do it just one click. So one of the ones that we've talked about quite a bit in the past, and it's still a viable option, is this local. So localwp.com. I'd say that one's still probably great for many people. Unfortunately, over time, it kind of got tied more to the hosting company now, WP Engine and all that. So I would still recommend it. I've had some issues with it on my Mac just for security things. So that's not the one I'm going to talk about today. And instead, I kind of mentioned this one previously before, but there's where is it? It's under, here it is. It's just called Studio. So it's created by WordPress, and it's kind of also based on, sorry, I'm jumping a couple windows here. So this is, I'll put the link to this below, but it's kind of based on another tool that's fairly recent, I'd say within the past year or so, which is Playground. So WordPress Playground, let's say it's sort of the precursor to the desktop tool Studio. WordPress Playground still has its place. WordPress Playground is basically spinning up and starting a live WordPress site in your browser. So it's kind of like with the tool I'm going to show, the biggest difference is Playground in many ways was intended for kind of a temporary throwaway. So you close your browser. When it was first created, it basically threw it away. There's a little bit more persistence to Playground now. The reason, though, I would recommend using the standalone tool, which is WordPress Studio, is I've found it much faster. I found just memory optimization better because it's not using just your browser. So if you have a bunch of tabs open, like some of us do, the Playground could really choke your browser. So WordPress Studio, and I'll put a link to this in the chat afterwards. I didn't realize I have a Linux one too. So I'm running on a Mac, but there's downloads for Mac, there's Windows and Linux, et cetera, et cetera. So it's free. It is created by developers from WordPress.com, but you don't need to either have a WordPress.com account and you don't need to deploy what you build to WordPress.com. And again, for real beginners, the other thing that's confusing about WordPress is there's a commercial hosting thing called WordPress.com, and then there's WordPress.org, which is the open source framework and everything that you download, plugins and themes and all that kind of stuff. You can use WordPress as we will tonight from WordPress.org. You don't need to sign up for WordPress.com. I think that's somewhat yeah, somewhat confusing for people and maybe intentionally confusing for various reasons. But anyway, so even though this is built by WordPress.com, like I said, it's just a tool, just like that local tool I showed you is, it's basically for creating and running and setting up WordPress, but it has a lot of additional features to it too. There's a quick scan thing. So what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to try to keep this down to 20 minutes. There's a lot to this tool, just like Playground. There's a lot to Playground, which is great. It's been really improved quite a bit over the past year or so. So I'm going to just in my 20 minutes just show you a real quick overview of how to install and configure. Again, the install is just run the executable on your computer, but just what what Studio looks like, what you can do with it. I'll spin up a site in hopefully 10 minutes. I'll create an actual, honest to goodness, working WordPress site in like 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll see how much time I have left to show a little bit more advanced things you can do. What I'm hoping is if people are interested in this, in maybe the next session, our summer sessions, I'll show more advanced things you can do with it. Because there's a lot of powerful tools built into it that are kind of neat. So, all right. With that, again, this is a place where you can download it, definitely play around with this yourself. So let me show you what it looks like on my computer. So I've installed it already. And I have one site in here that I'll talk about later, how I got the site into here. But when you start off, you're going to have nothing on the sidebar. And again, you can configure the look and feel, dark theme, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to add a site, and it gives you 3 options to begin with. So we're going to do the build a new site from scratch. You can connect it if you already have WordPress.com. You can connect it to a site and pull the site down and push it forward using this tool. Looks like my Zoom might be slowing down in a second. One thing about these tools is I do think they do take some CPU. And then import from a backup. I'll show that a little bit later to how I did that if we have time. Otherwise, that'll get moved to next time. So let me just start the simple one. So when I start creating a site, it has some options to begin with. First off, and this is what I'm going to choose, just create a brand new empty WordPress site. So what this is going to do is it's going to set up that environment that you need to run WordPress. So again, if you're brand new to WordPress, I can run this on my computer, but it doesn't do me any good because no one else can access it. You need a hosting environment and a hosting company, and we can go down that road of, hosting companies we recommend later. But what this is doing is it's kind of building like an isolated hosting sandbox on my computer that I can run WordPress. So I don't need to, again, spend the money to get a host right now. There are other versions that you can start with. You can also, let's say I wanted to do something like for WooCommerce, for an e-commerce store. There's stuff for developers. And then there's these other blueprints that are kind of interesting. We'll talk about these maybe a little bit later that come with it too. But just for, I'm just going to start with something simple, an empty site. I'm just going to call it, again, you can change the site name to whatever you want it to be. Here's some cool things too to point out right now. Again, this is storing it locally on my computer. So when I'm done, I can find the files here. So I'm on a Mac. So under, users, my name, it's under Studio. That's where I can find this site. So you can manage these all together. You can back them up on your computer. You can delete things pretty easily. But the other cool thing too is you can change what version of PHP you want to run this on. So that becomes more interesting later. Let's say you're pulling down a website that you already have created and you want to test out, hey, how will the site work if I upgrade it to a new version of PHP? because I think the minimum right now for WordPress is 8.4, I believe. But if you have an old site you're maintaining, things can break when you upgrade to a higher version of PHP. So you can use this as a testing environment to try that out. Or another thing too is, let's say you want to test out, old builds of WordPress or new builds of WordPress. Again, the sandbox thing gives you on your computer the equivalent of like a staging environment that you would have to pay a hosting company to have. So anyway, I'm going to stick with, don't, again, it's bad practice, security practice. Don't do this. Don't do what I do. But normally you don't want to have admin and whatever junk this is. But again, this is just running on my computer, so there's no real threat here. You can also use a custom domain here if you want to make it a little bit more like what you're going to see when you deploy it. But just for the sake of time here, I'm going to leave it alone, not use a custom domain. So I'm going to add my site, and it should take just a minute or two because it's very uh, it's kind of a very basic setup it's doing, but what it's doing behind the scenes is what's neat about this is it's applying what they call a blueprint, which we'll look at a little bit later. So a blueprint, what's neat is you can modify this in the future to say, when I create this new site, install it automatically with these types of plugins or themes and things like that. Peter has shown that too on that playground tool. You can do something similar. So again, they're trying to incorporate that into this tool. So, I mean, literally that took what, like a minute or two? So I've got this site, my WordPress website. And as you can see, it's running right now. So there's a couple states. I can stop the site. So when I stop a site, that means it's basically shutting down like the web server that's hosting the site. So I can't then open it up in a browser. But when I start the site back up again, it takes a second. Again, it'll tell you I'm starting up the sites. Yep, starting right there. It gives you a status. When it starts it up, there's a couple things I could do. One is I can just view the site, which I'll do that first. And then the other, probably more important things, I can actually go in there now and edit the site and start adding things to it, like content, themes, plugins, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I think it's a little bit slow right now because I'm running Zoom, so you can't hear my MacBook, but my fan is humming a little bit there as I'm doing this. But there we go. So it's running right now. So again, there's two ways I would now access the site. It's kind of bringing up a preview. Again, it's chugging a little bit here. So first I'll just open it up in my browser. So I click on Open Local Site, and this is just a blank WordPress site. So one thing to note is it's using, because it's running locally on my computer, you can see the URL is just localhost colon 8882. So that's the kind of the node that it's pointing to, or the port that it's going to. So if I create multiple sites, it's going to have a different local host and a different port number for each one of them. That's why I said if you did a custom URL, you can name this something a little bit different. So, but right now, this is an actual working WordPress site. It's using the 2025 theme. There's really nothing in here, but what's probably more interesting is to go back into this and let's open it up. So it's nice too that normally in WordPress, if you want to get to the admin page on a site, you have to do /wp admin to get in here. So this will make me log in. I'll have to, log in with that admin password that I created when I first set up the site, but I didn't write it down. I don't know what it is, but this gives you a one-click way to get in there as well. So if I just click WP admin in a second or two, it's going to automatically auto log me in. So that's nice. Again, these are throwaway sandbox things. You don't need to keep a list of all these passwords or save them in your browser or anything. You can just auto log in. So as I said, by default, that blank blueprint that installed is using the latest version of WordPress. It's using, I believe, the latest theme that comes with WordPress, which should be the 2025 theme. It's also giving you some of the older themes too, which at this point, again, if you're brand new to WordPress, I can't see why in the world you want to use one of the older themes. I could just delete these, get rid of them, et cetera, et cetera. And from a plugin standpoint, I think it just comes with the basic, probably Hello Dolly, maybe Kismet. Yeah, and they're not activated, which is nice. So I kind of appreciate that. So at this point, I've got, back to where I started. Why would you do this? One reason, if you're a beginner, and many people here come to our group because they're beginners, this is your sandbox. This is your safe place to learn WordPress. Use this tool, install WordPress. There's also a couple other things too. I'll show you real quick is again, if you're just beginning to learn WordPress, one thing that be confusing sometimes is navigating the administrative screens here. I mean, in this case, it's a brand new install, so it's fairly simple to find things. But one thing that's kind of cool with this tool, with Studio, is you can actually jump into some of the administrative pages right from here. So again, this 2025 theme is a full site editor, which probably not the best thing for beginners to jump into. But anyway, one thing I can do is right from here, I can say, oh, I want to change the styles overall for my site. So I can just click on styles, and rather than trying to find it under, editor and kind of the nested menus, this will bring me right to that spot. So it's kind of it gives you some navigation shortcuts, which is a nice thing. Let me see what else to show real quick from a setup standpoint. Again, these will probably say for a more advanced thing. There's some additional pieces you can do here. Settings too. The nice thing to know is some of those settings we set in the very beginning, you can modify them afterwards. So you're not stuck with them. You could change the IDs, passwords, etc. I'll show these other things a little bit later, and we'll skip the sync thing for right now. So at this point, like I said, I'm running a live WordPress site on my desktop. So what am I down to? Let's say like 10-ish minutes for the brand new folks. Let me show you what I would do if I was going to start learning WordPress. I probably wouldn't use this theme. If you go back to our YouTube channel, Peter and I did a series a while back now called like building a website step by step, kind of from scratch. I'd say a lot of that still applies. Some things probably have changed a little bit in terms of navigation and stuff, but personally, I would still encourage probably beginners to use a theme that's a little bit more friendly, such as Cadence. I know Cadence these days is getting a little bit of a rap for various things the company is doing. For me personally, I don't have issues with it. I know, Peter, you may have a better
Look,
recommendation.
I'm wearing my Cadence shirt almost in memoriam.
Right.
We could talk a little bit about that too a little
Yeah.
bit later. Yeah.
So again, just for a beginner, if you're really getting started, we have a whole series. The other reason I think I mentioned Cadence is, like I said, we've covered it a lot. There's actually quite a big community around Cadence. So if you saw, again, if you're brand new, the thing about WordPress that's neat is you can change what's called the theme. So the theme controls not just the look and feel of the site. It does definitely do that. Some themes also do more than just the look and feel. They actually give you some functionality. And this Cadence theme that we're talking about, there's a free version and a paid version. The free version actually packs a lot of features into it, including some things I think that make your life a lot easier, especially as a beginner or even somebody more advanced. So first thing I would do is, sorry, my Zoom window is always blocking me here, is I would still install the Cadence theme, and it's going to take a second or two to install this. And the next thing I'll do from a plugin, so plugins, again, if you're totally brand new to WordPress, plugins are things that are either, again, same thing, free or paid, depending where you find them or depending what you need. But plugins extend functionality in your website. So there's thousands, tens of thousands of plugins to do almost anything in the world you could think of on your site. So, but the plugin that I'm going to install just for beginners is the Cadence blocks plugin and one more too. So I'll just if you search for Cadence under add plugins, what these blocks do, and again, you'll find it there's the first one, is there's a bunch of blocks. If we have time today, we'll definitely show building a page with these blocks. These are the blocks that you really use to build the content on a page. So everything on your page. Most web pages are built with rows, columns, text, things like that. Cadence blocks are a friendlier, I'd say more powerful version of what comes for free with WordPress. That's why it's still something I recommend. So I'll do a quick install of that. And then the other one, I'm just doing this just for demo purposes, but you may want to consider this if you're really, really brand new starting off. And if you're not very comfortable with designing a site or kind of maybe getting some ideas, again, that's what a sandbox is nice for, is getting ideas of what a good site looks like. I would recommend trying out some of these starter templates from Cadence. So this is, again, these are both free. So Cadence starter templates, I'll install that now. And so once you install a plugin, and again, the cool thing is these are local, I'll show that in a second too, where these files are. So both of these are installed and then I need to activate them. So just activate them. So there's a two-step process, install and activate. I'm just going to activate them real quick. And then the other one was the starter templates, activate it. And what you'll immediately see is how drastically these change the look of the site. So I believe I just want to make sure that I made the Cadence theme active as well, which I believe I did not. I'll make that active. So now if you kind of remember what the site looked like when I first brought it up, as a little things were all over the place. Now if you look at the site, just by doing those three things, I haven't touched any pages or anything like that. The site already looks kind of drastically different. So here's what a sample page could look like. This is showing me the blog first, but this is showing what a sample page could look like. So it changes the look and feel of everything, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll hold off on really building out more of the site right now, but just to kind of go back to the tool itself, the studio tool, to show you kind of what it did and improve that it's really running locally. If I look at my WordPress website, I look in Finder on my computer, there it is. So under my WordPress website on my hard drive, under content, if I look at themes, there's the Cadence theme, and then there's the two plugins that I installed, the blocks and the starter templates right there. So like I said, it's a great way to dive into WordPress at this point too. Again, I can stop this. So I'll show this real quick because this may get people confused at times too. So if I stop running this, you see it takes a second too to kind of start and stop these things. Because this is running locally on my computer, as soon as it's stopped, if I go back to this page and try to refresh it, it's going to say, what are you talking about? It's gone. The web server itself has stopped running. So that's the super high overview in like 18 minutes or so. Did any questions pop up in the chat, Peter, while I was going?
Yeah, there were what had to do with things like hosting, for because this touches on hosting. And I think it's a good point to say that with the local WP and with Studio that you're using that you just demonstrated, you can spend all your time working on a website locally and not pay for any kind of hosting, because that can be a concern. You could just and decide, hey, you know what? Now I'm ready to publish. At that point, you can migrate it up to, get a web hosting company. There's a question about, there are a couple of free hosting companies. I don't have any experience with them. There was a question about free hosting.
Yeah.
There, you will always get feedback discussing that the amount of money you pay for your hosting is going to correlate to its security, its speed, its just the overall quality of the hosting. But I can certainly understand. I've gotten acceptable hosting on plans that have been like, quite honestly, $3 a month, for
Yeah.
example. As an add-on. Some of the now these sites are not going to handle a whole lot of traffic, but you might start off with you don't have a whole lot of traffic, so there's different things you can do. There's many people who will certainly recommend to never go with some of those, but reputable names, like there's a good domain registration company called Namecheap. So it's Namecheap, and Namecheap, once you set up a domain, you can set up hosting pretty quickly, and their hosting is worked, when I've worked fine and was not expensive, and it worked well. The panels to manage your hosting was good. There's a note about Bluehost, which is a very well established web hosting company that's sort of in the lower middle price range, depending on, and you can keep going up and up and up. Sue, I want to invite you into this conversation.
Well, thank you. The buying a domain, Namecheap is fine. There's dozens of good ones.
Yep.
But I would suggest Cloudflare. Because all right, they already told you I'm very big about security. And Cloudflare gives you the best security you can pretty much get for free. and they do not upcharge on domains. Every other
Hear that, yeah.
registrar is going to charge you more than what it actually costs them because you got to make a profit to do business. But Cloudflare is the least expensive. And I know this is not a beginner topic, but I'm going to tell you, run every website you can through Cloudflare. It's free. There is some setup. You can pay somebody to do it if you don't know how, or I can get you a step-by-step, have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee with you, but I can get you a step-by-step video that will tell you how to do it. But cloudflare.com is what anybody who has some, Peter, are you using Cloudflare?
So I'm glad you asked me specifically. And I think we need to have a whole session on Cloudflare.
Yeah.
I used Cloudflare years ago, and it was a terrible experience. And I never went.
Yeah.
Did you sit through Nathan's 2-day course on Cloudflare?
No. I had
You should do
already.
it.
Yeah.
Well, when you have time, it's free. You can watch the replay. And when you can get me smart enough to put a site into Cloudflare, then you have done a good webinar.
Yeah.
So, but as long as you're talking about buying domains, if you buy them at Cloudflare, that's where they're the least expensive and very reliable.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's relatively new. That the other ones that, and I only mentioned Namecheap because of the inexpensive hosting. I've used Hover. I've used Pork Bun, which is for registering domains, and Namecheap. I have not used Cloudflare yet for the domains, but those other three are also. There's an upcharge, but it is minimal. I mean,
they're not like GoDaddy with they try to upcharge you and everything about
GoDaddy has the upcharge.
Yeah.
I still have. I know customers are still on Network Solutions, which used to
it's
be the place to go, and for the expense that you would have to pay. I don't know if people are still, may have a legacy site that they inherited and it's on networks. It's hard to use. I mean, their interfaces are still 2009 kind of thing, if I'm correct. But yeah, I think spending some time on what Cloudflare does, because it's often given as there's a couple of other folks who are on some of these meetups, and one guy who will go without, I won't name him, but he'll just say, like, what's the answer to something? Cloudflare. Like, matter of fact.
I'll admit I'm also of a mixed opinion on Cloudflare, but that's for a separate topic. But let me just wrap this thing up real quick. So in terms of use cases for this, again, we could spend a lot of time, and hopefully I'll try to continue to do this through the summer. The first one, like we said, is if you're brand new learning WordPress, this is your sandbox. Highly recommend it. Don't spend a dime on anything else. Just download this for free. The second use case of this is, as I said, if you're maintaining a site, you can bring down, and that's probably look for that next month. You can bring down and run an existing site. So I have a site already that is published and running called just one of our demo sites I use forever. And I made a backup of that site and imported the backup here. So I'm running a local copy of my website. And why would I do that? Let's say I want to do debugging. Let's say I want to treat it kind of like a staging site. I want to make some changes that I want to test out and not affect my regular site. Maybe I don't want to pay for a hosting plan that has staging. I can use this for that. So that's another use case for this. And then I thought I had a third one, but it's in my mind. So yeah, but pulling things to, or like it's kind of similar to number two is I've got a site that maybe all I want to do is some either debugging. I'm going to try to show that in the future too. I've got a problem that I can't easily debug or don't want to touch it in a live environment, or I want to test out an upgrade of a plugin upgrade or PHP upgrade. You can do it locally, or again, just kind of like a staging site. So Studio, that was my 25 minutes of stuff. So I'll put a link to that if we didn't put it in the chat already. All right. Peter, what do you got for us?
Well, I thought one topic we can touch on, because you cannot not talk about it almost everywhere if you're talking about WordPress, building a website, and everything in between, which is AI, right? So artificial intelligence and all of the models that go with it and all. It's really being pushed into WordPress almost at a point, and there are plenty of people who are anti AI, and for good reason. And there's nothing saying that you have to use AI to do what you're doing. What you're doing. So if you come across AI in something, especially in the WordPress world, and it's on, and you want to turn it off, we can kind of talk about it. But I'm gonna do like a little primer on this. And guess what I use to do it? AI, right? To help me kind of build some of these things. It's kind of fun. I'll give you as much of the behind the scenes of how I do things. I use 4 tools, 3 primarily. I use ChatGPT or OpenAI. I use Claude, and mainly through the chat at this point. And as opposed to like the Claude code and all these things, I don't do a lot of directly with the API, but we'll talk about that. I'm already throwing out jargon that I kind of want to touch upon. And then I use a tool called Perplexity. All of these have free versions. I do have the paid versions just because it gives me more, but I'm not at the $200 a month kind of, I'm at $20 a month on each one. And I really like them. So I'm going to share my screen. This is a Perplexity. Do you see my window? Right?
Yep.
Okay. So the chat that I had with Perplexity here on this particular one, and I'll get specific into WordPress, but I was like, I'm basically saying, please create for me a primer, however you like to pronounce it, but like a little kind of overview, because there's a lot of things being said in WordPress where there's, again, jargon is getting thrown out, and it's even coming for new users. All of a sudden they're being like, oh, what is this AI connector thing and all? We'll talk about that. So I kind of went through this process, having it build out the question. Then one of the things I like to do is look at what it gives me, and then I said, well, hey, can you give me a slideshow, right? So that's another thing you can do. So just FYI, and in fact, I'll show you another thing that I do here, because I'm going to put this on our Hartford WP website, which is, I get to a point where I like it. It's like, you create for me an HTML slideshow, and then I say, very good. Now modify the HTML output so that I can use it in a custom HTML block in a WordPress site. So you can get really specific. Well, obviously you can get very specific with AI, but when you see this, when I put this on our website, it's going to be in a WordPress core block called the custom HTML block, and I'm just going to be using this code in there. So, but right now I'll just show you. We'll do it really quickly, because this was what AI helped me create this HTML slideshow. So I'm not going to necessarily read every last bit of this, but just know this kind of a little reference thing. But a lot of where AI came from would be plugins and people trying to kind of put it in, and how can we help with content and all. So the WordPress.org, the folks, the contributors who are making it, are saying, hey, there's certain things that we can do right at the within WordPress. Some of this is coming from the top leadership that says, hey, how can we connect to AI and have some kind of organized way of managing that? And there is, I'll show you this thing that's called the connectors page in your settings page, that came out in the last version, WordPress 7.0, which is the current version. But so, what is in core now? Without getting into details, but through connectors, you can get abilities API, so you immediately into jargon, but that is something that if something else is connecting, you say, well, what abilities do you have active? MCP, I'm like, well, what are all these things? Modal context protocol. So we'll get into it, what is not fully core. I don't need to go into this stuff, how this works together, where you're getting your AI information, how you're connecting it to WordPress, what is it doing, and that interaction. Oh, look, I don't know if you could see,
Your little ghost.
Perplexity gave me a little cursor highlighting thing. This is all generated. I just said, create me a slideshow. So all of the effects and everything are here. But this is, this is one of the things that I think where you might initially find what's useful in AI. And this is within WordPress as opposed to, just going out and telling an AI tool to go build me a website. This is like while you're in WordPress, when you're connected, and I'll show you that. But you get key is like writing help, and then media help. So things like the alt text and you know help me summarize this content, things like that. When it gets into the admin help, I think there'll be more coming as you can build on top of what WordPress is. Again, to new people, the thing that's powerful about this tool that we use called WordPress is that it's open source and it's extensible, and it is built upon. There's plugins, there's themes, there's things that build it up and build it out. So a lot of these types of tools further enhance it. Doesn't mean you need to use them all. And in fact, we kind of say this all the time, especially if you're new. When you go out and look for a tutorial on WordPress, you will find tutorials that are very specific to a set of tools put together in a WordPress environment that may not match either what you have or what you see in another tutorial or what you actually need or want. That's probably one of the more confusing things. Now we're putting in an AI layer on it because all of the builders that are out there, there's like an Elementor, which is one of the most popular tools. When you do a WordPress tutorial search, you will see countless people talking about Elementor as that's what you need to build your WordPress site with, which is a plugin that helps you build pages. You don't, it's an option. It is very popular. And now Elementor has AI tools built into it. So we don't have to worry about, what's coming next. It's kind of getting into it. How could you use it? Content, accessibility, managing your data. So this is just, again, we'll share this out, but these are some of the things too that I think is important. So what is an API? You hear about API. In fact, I think that it should tell me what the acronym actually spells out. But this is what connects your WordPress to the AI that you're using, and it's the protocol in between these two systems. Through the connectors, the abilities. I want to fix this. You'll hear, somebody all of a sudden throw out MCP, Model Context Protocol. But that is something when you get into how do these AI tools get the information, use the information, share the information, and by having certain protocols and make it kind of smooths all that out. Let me see. So I'm going to share this, just to kind of make sure that we get into I want to say API is not. So this gets confusing because the thing I'm going to show you, it's like, oh, you can connect to ChatGPT, but you have to connect to not ChatGPT. You're connecting to the OpenAI tool using the API credits, which is a different amount, which gets paid as you set up an account, and then it takes money out of your bank, if you will. It is not what you're paying for when you're dealing with chats. I think that's an important thing because if you're not used to it and people are just so like, oh, you just connect your API. It's like it needs more explanation than that. So I wanted to make sure we were including some information on that. There's another topic too, which is going to be getting to a really interesting thing going forward. We'll probably do more time on it, which is the difference between search engine optimization, right? Making your site findable by search engines, to LLM ready, large language model, which are what these AI tools many are, right? They're grabbing all this information and then sorting through it and then, providing answers out of that information. Well, having a website now that is LLM ready and uses there's even like you have your index files that Google will index so that it knows all the pages, to now having sort of question answer pairs, because that's what AI likes, right? People ask a question. It's like, oh, the question, here's an answer that I happen to find on this website. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that there's also the aspect, especially if you're a user of AI tools, and I'd be very curious to know if you want to put in the chat that you are and which ones you use. Many people don't go to the websites that is the source of the information that you get now when you even just use Google. You're getting that AI summary, and it's like, hey, I just got the answer. So there's a very interesting dance that's going on with providing information that then gets used by the AI tools, the LLM engines that are providing the answers to it. So being able to compare those it'll be up to debate going forward on how much SEO works for a website, and it all depends on what kind of website you have and what you're trying to do. Again, bigger topics in here. I'm going to get right into then what we are now finding in WordPress. So in WordPress 7.0 just released, and especially if you're new, this is your admin your admin backend. Mine will look different than yours for all kinds of reasons. One, I have plugins that are adding things to it. I also have built some things where now I'm getting certain things in my toolbar that you won't see. So don't worry about when you go, wait a minute, why does he have a build mode on these things? These are things that I built using AI. I'm not a coder. I am a user of code. So I just always want to know. I just want to let people know that when we demo something, it's probably not going to match exactly what you have. And but in settings, which is in all WordPress setups, there is now a new section called connections. The connections page is where you go to set up how WordPress now talks to whatever AI of choice that you have. Right now, this is what comes with core. There is a way to add more tools here. And most of us here, we're pretty much looking at these. Chat GPT, OpenAI. Again, no, I've already connected this. When you go through, if you're going to add something, it'll go through a process. Say I wanted to add a connector, which is I want to allow my WordPress site to talk to my AI tool of choice and get answers back and bring it back into my site. That's what this is. This was a new thing to kind of put that all in one place instead of every plugin asking you to do something. If other plugins, if other things that you're using are also using AI, the idea is it would be able to find that connection through this connectors page. Honestly, there's also some debate on, okay, then you have to manage making sure that you've got connectors, plugins that are using it properly, because there is a cost to go out and do something. Now, it could be pennies, right? So I've experimented a little bit. I put in $10 into my account, and my account now is at $9.89, right? So there's a cost involved.
And sometimes the cost is when the volume hits. That's when that's the thing.
So if, for example, if you're using AI with a plugin that is being used by people who are using your site, because you can use AI, and now you've got more transactions going. People are coming to the site. You have something that says, "Oh, go get AI to do something." That's taking money out of your pocket. I guess the warning here is be careful. AI is not free, and AI has to be managed carefully. So there's a learning curve on knowing how that is getting used, and you have to manage that on your AI site. Now, I'm going to be careful here. I'm going to show you kind of the background on the OpenAI. I can't remember what it reveals, and if it reveals my secret key, which it won't, then I would have to change it. But just basically, it's telling, here is the place where you get this long key that goes in here, that because again, you don't want anyone else to figure out what that key is, because if they can bang against your account, it's going to come to you charging. And they put in, I'll try to make it easier to see. They put in here, WordPress, what that link is for. This is now, I'm going to my list of keys, right? So this is now I'm on the OpenAI platform where I'm managing the keys, and this is where I can check my billing and things like that. I'm presenting this to you not to know exactly how to do it, but to know what you will encounter once you start experimenting. When you go see something and saying, "Oh, well, how do I add AI?" And it's like, well, the first thing you got to do is connect, and you use that through this connectors. The next thing is you need something that's going to do the talking and using of the AI data. And one of the easiest things to experiment with is literally an experiment plugin called AI. Now, this is, but for anyone who's not familiar with this is your WordPress plugin page. So plugins, little bits of code that you add that add functionality and capabilities to your website. If you were to search when adding a new plugin, or if you were to go to WordPress.org and then the plugin section, there is a plugin literally called AI, but if you notice, the author is WordPress.org. So this is from the WordPress team. It's not a third party that does it. It's connected to the WordPress development team. And I have installed this and activated it. Now, when you do that, when you take this and then you make it, you first install it. We could demonstrate for anyone at the end if they want to say, well, how do I install a plugin? And that now it's active. So I've already activated it. You could tell it's active because it's highlighted in such a way. And in fact, you'll see when you look at it, deactivate is a choice that I have. I can deactivate it. You can, down here are deactivated plugins that I would activate. So you install it, you activate it. Now, once you activate it, what you now have in your settings is now you have an AI choice. That wasn't there until I activated the plugin. This, again, plugin adds functionality to your website. And if this is getting confusing, I certainly understand. But this interface here is what this AI plugin that I just loaded allows me to now work through experiments. Some of this will over time land likely in WordPress core, and then you may have the options to turn things on and off. And in fact, there's sort of a master switch on this page for enabling AI, which now is enabled. And now you can set all the different things that you want to try doing and I haven't tried some of these. We can experiment now, and it's the timing seems okay. But like right now, I've only turned on excerpt generation and alt text generation. Right, those are and I can show you how this works. But right now, this is my first. I went to connector. I connected to an AI tool of choice through the API connector. Put that code in, so now they can talk back and forth. Now to say, okay, great, but what's going to use that? Well, now I have this plugin, the AI plugin, and there are other plugins that can potentially use it. I've activated that. And within there now under my settings, so far I'm only turning on excerpt generation and alt text generation. And then I've saved it. These are the other choices. You can, we can go through those afterwards, but I just wanted to show then kind of the demonstration. So now if I go and look at the posts, I'll go through it. And if you're not sure where your posts are, if I look at all posts, close this tab. So this is showing, and this is an experiment. This is a website that I do a lot of experimenting on. I'll go down to a post here that leaves, again, all experiments, but let me go down to one that has something to look at. So I'm going to edit this post. I'm zoomed in to make it a little bit easier to see. And if I'm on a PC, so if you're not sure how to do that, if you do Control plus, you zoom in. If you do Control minus, you zoom out. If you do Control 0, you go back to whatever your base setting is. So I use that to kind of help show things. But say I've got, here's my WordPress page. I'll close I default to showing all of my blocks. I use the block editor. I'll hide that off. But I've turned on image alt text generation through AI and excerpt generation. So now I have this excerpt here. So an excerpt is the summary, a little summary of the page. It's used on, say you have a list of your posts, so you can choose to show the excerpt, the little blurb about your post. It's a way of doing it. But I wrote this at some point in time, but say I wanted to, this button here, regenerate excerpt, that's there because the AI tool is enabled to allow editing of the excerpt. And what this will do is it will look at the content of what I've written on this page, all of this content, and it'll write for me a short excerpt. So let's do that. Let's regenerate and see what it does. This is only there because I've got the connector connecting to OpenAI and the AI.
And this is one of the use cases. And there'll be, I'll pause you after this, Peter, because a couple of questions will come up in chat. But this, to me, is one of the probably best use cases still of AI or LLMs, I should be more specific, because text summarization is still, I think, probably one of the better uses of it, because that's kind of what it was meant to do.
Yep, I agree. And this is terrible. It's too long. But that's why you could do so. It's gathering. It depends. It may not be too long depending on what you're showing and all. But you can also say, if I don't like it, I can regenerate it. Now, I just took a couple pennies off of
just burned a token for that.
I just burned it. See, this is a little shorter, and I can read it and go, yeah, I like it, and people don't put excerpts because it's just like you said, Rick.
Right.
It's kind of a pain to write.
Let me throw two of the questions that came up during the chat. So one was from a couple of people. I think May had it too, and you're kind of explaining it now. But what are some of the use cases for like doing AI within WordPress? I think you showed this, which is kind of doing those, let's say, mundane tasks that people put aside or for whatever reason, like excerpts, alt text, that kind of stuff. I think you showed generation, so image generation. To me, some of those, though, and I'll stop there, Peter, but some of those to me are also like, they're almost like the one-time-ish things you do. Like you would do it and you've built the site, maybe except for alt text kind of stuff. But like, can you think of what's like more ongoing AI stuff that you would build into your site that, let's say, the visitor would perhaps interact with? Is there anything you can think of like that?
Well, we can invent things right now. There's nothing that I'm using for that. I think it's going to. I'll tell you a project that I'm working on that would be something that a user would come. That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Use. So a project that I'm working on. The goal behind it is to have a number of documents saved in a place on the website that define programs. In this case, it's social programs, and there's eligibility that goes on. The idea would be having the LLM, and this is where the API maybe that's living actually on the API server. So versus that's an experiment that I'm doing. But for the user coming to the website is to have a conversational chat to be able to allow that person who doesn't know what they may be eligible for example, to be able to ask questions in sort of and have the AI tool that's on your website. So they're not directly using the AI tool. They are using it through your website to be able to say.
And that's what I think May was kind of, so it's sort of like the chat agents, those kind of things, or help desk things that I've seen. And then just the other quick question too, Peter, is around back to the keys there, the API keys. I think Elisa was saying, I guess this is that age-old question with plugin licenses as well. It's like, if you're handing this off to a client, eventually the site, those API keys for the different LLMs and AI services you're using, have you thought about that yet? Of like and I haven't thought about like, do you shut those down, I guess, when you hand it over to the client? They have to pay for it now and get their keys, I guess?
You would have to do that. I know there are some models where there's actually like to make it easier, you're literally buying a service that provides those tokens through a method versus connecting. But in all cases, you can do two things. One is you could just delete it from here and it's gone. The other thing is on the when I showed the open AI here, if I go back here, you can disable any
Yeah.
API key and it's
So
gone. What's interesting is, like, at least for this, I can't even see unless I put that key somewhere else. I can't go back on the site and go, oh, wait a minute, what's that key? I want to put it back in.
yeah.
You delete it and create a new one.
I kind of
It,
think it's very similar to like license keys for paid plugins and things like that. To me,
yeah.
this is very similar to, except the usage piece. Although, again, I ran into that recently with the Google Maps API. A lot of the Google Cloud stuff, again, for people who aren't aware of it, they make you put a credit card on the
Yes.
console. And yeah, I built a site that was heavily using the API key. And when I handed over to the client, they put their credit card in there, and then
Yeah.
they suddenly learned, oh, wait a minute, this thing got more popular than they expected. So yeah, they were getting, because it says you get a free tier, just like a lot of these tokens, it's free up to a point. You go beyond that, and yeah, it's real
That
money.
that so another project I'm working on is heavily map based, and I'm not using Google because I can't.
Yeah.
I won't. Ultimately, if there's any kind of traction with this, because there's so much talking back and forth, so I'm using a OpenStreetMaps and a interface to that, which is a free uh, 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 mapping solution. The Google one, yeah, it's surprising. And the other thing that you have to be careful of is it's not like, oh, one person does one transaction. You could have many transactions happening back and forth for like what feels like a one thing that you've done. So that's again where you need to be so very, very careful.
And Peter, one last one. Sorry, from Sue.
Yeah,
Sue had a question to relate to API keys, and this is, I think you talked about this a while ago. I don't know if you have an answer for this, but there still that issue around exposed API keys? Wasn't there a whole concern initially with 7.0 of like
I
plugins
think it's still,
perhaps?
yeah. I
Yeah.
actually, in fact, I think I put it in the slide deck at one point because I still have the question of this connector, and it's like, where are the guardrails that say if I load a plugin and it starts using my API key without me knowing it,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden, wait a minute, something is using my money, right, on the API keys. I actually think I think there needs to be more attention to that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not yet putting this live on a site, or if I am, I'm going to be darn careful of what plugins I have. And any plugins I use, I typically know what they're doing, and there's going to have to be ways of double checking. As I understand it, in fact, they may have built this in, and I may be forgetting that there was some place I saw, and it's escaping my mind where it basically says, maybe somewhere in the connectors, where it basically says these two plugins are using,
Right.
are talking, and you can. I believe
One,
that's somewhere.
one last
I know
quick
it's
thought.
going to have to be more visible because it's much more of an issue.
One last quick one before I forget, because it annoyed me too. If you're on
Yeah.
SiteGround, you probably discovered you suddenly had a new plugin installed on all your sites, whether you wanted it or not. It's the
Yeah.
SiteGround AI plugin. So
Yeah. The,
surprise.
the, that's exactly right. And in fact, AI is being built into so many tools that people have been happily using, um, in a way that it's like, wait a minute, I might not want what you're giving me, kind of stuff like that. That's what SiteGround did. And, Elementor is now adding. Now, I am not an Elementor user. And they think they call theirs Angie, which is funny because one of the first AI tools was called Bertha, and Bertha has been shut down by the developers who've done it. They're like, I think they just felt like the competition kind of knocked them out of what they were doing. But yeah, it's getting built into everything now.
And in
Now, one thing
fact,
that's
go
kind
ahead.
of interesting with the connector here, or and I think under settings where you go into, like right now, this AI experiments thing, and again, this is coming from WordPress, you can see the different ones that I haven't necessarily turned on. This is what you were saying, uh, set what category should something be, um, make my content a little bit more tighter. I mean, now you can get into the full, write me a post about wildlife in Connecticut, and it writes it all for me. Now, at some point, I'm like, what's the point? That it's not your. I like the summarization, things like that. But then what was I gonna mention here that was in? I lost my train of thought. But
That's right.
seeing what these capabilities are, I'm going to go to one more thing, which is kind of interesting, which is if you click on an image on the right bar, we're pushing the alt text, which is very important. We did some accessibility sessions in the past. We always talk about accessibility. Very important that your images are given an alt text. It's not an SEO thing. It is to help people who can't see the image understand what's on your web page. People have not liked doing it because it's kind of a pain, right? Like, oh, how do I describe this to somebody who can't see it in such a way that is brief enough so I'm not throwing too many words? Because that's, if you've ever heard somebody in the screen reader and you're getting hit by a lot of stuff thrown at you, being succinct but accurate is very helpful. Well, you can, in this case, now I've turned that on with the AI plugin, that option. So now when I click on an image, I have, again, regenerate alt text, the regenerate. It sees that I have something. If I didn't have anything, it would say, would you like me to generate text? Now, bees on a purple aster is what was there. Let's see if I roll the dice on my AI, it's now talking to, and it's giving me now. What's nice is it didn't change what I had in there. It's giving me, hey, maybe you want this, and then if I apply it, it'll make that the alt text for that image. New England aster flowers. See, I wouldn't use that because the sites on New England aster flowers aren't necessarily
verbose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little verbose. So maybe, I want to, if I dismiss that, I can regenerate it. We'll do one more. But now, if you didn't know anything to say,
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. Bumblebee on a purple New England aster on purple New England aster flowers. That's fine. Or let's see if I can I edit this and apply it?
Yeah.
I'm sure I can. Yep. So again, you're using the tool now, AI, to give you content that you can still edit, and I would recommend that you do. And this is because I can do this. Now, I'll give you a hint. You could take that image, you can go to ChatGPT in your chat engine, upload the image and say, write some alt text for me. And it might give you bumblebee on purple aster flowers or something like that. And then you would cut and paste it. This, by having it within WordPress, you're making that, much more, frictionless, we call it, right? Efficient to get to.
Mhm.
So we're coming to the end of what we normally have time. So if there's any questions or anything else.
I think some of the stuff that was good, there was good conversation in the chat, just AI. Again, I think AI is the topic du jour, and we'll be covering it more. Peter will be covering it more during the summer months as well, too. So I think the thing that comes up a lot, and I think there's actually a talk about this in the WordPress Europe, is it's probably a bigger one too, the impact of AI to again, website traffic, content generation, creating websites. It has a huge impact right now to everything. And I think things are still a bit uncertain. I would in fact say take it with a grain of salt. If somebody tells you this is exactly what's going to happen in the future and how you should protect yourself against AI or leverage AI to get your site to number one, whatever. It's like, I think the dust still hasn't settled yet, even on the tooling. So
one of my bigger concerns when it comes to content generation, and there's a whole issue about obviously art for itself, and it's like, artists are being put out of work, graphic artists, things like that. One of my bigger concerns is as more AI generated content is being generated and shared, AI tools are using that content to further build its. So now you're building upon AI generated content is now feeding the large language models that are creating more. And it's like, at what will we lose absolute truth on
Yeah.
certain things? It gets so philosophical, but that ends up being, hallucination does exist. It is far better than it used to be.
And that was some of the chat discussion too around AI. So maybe that could be something we'll try to do a little bit too. I think I did that maybe last summer. We're talking AI. It might be good for me to revisit um, some of the AI coding stuff a bit. I don't really use Claude or anything like that, but at least within, I think what I showed last year was even within Chrome, the Chrome inspect tools, I remember doing a quick little demo last summer of like solving a problem or using the AI within the inspect tools of Chrome to generate some CSS or find something, do stuff like that. So it was a little bit hit or miss when I did that last time. But also the Perplexity browser too, which I don't know if they comment, is that still around? But that was another, you're saying
Yeah,
no?
they're with that browser and a lot of the things where you have the agents where now you're people are kind of sharing everything that they have, saying, sure, use my computer as much as you want.
Yeah.
Again,
But it had, I think what I found interesting, and again, this could be something we do for the summer stuff, is let's talk about in the context of maybe learning WordPress, using that browser to show you things
yeah,
about like, oh, show me how to do this thing in WordPress or show me how to do that. I think that could be another fun thing. So,
yeah.
well,
I think next time what I'll do, because I have a whole thing that I do where, like for example, taking site health, talking about how your site's working, run that through an AI and get some useful. Okay, tell me what I can do to fix things
yeah,
to help manage the overwhelm that can happen, especially like in a tool like WordPress and all. So showing using AI as a tool to help you work on your site
right,
without necessarily that AI being in your site, if you know what I
right,
mean.
right.
I've got a lot of examples of that. So
So those are good suggestions. I saw a lot of other stuff. So yes, someone else asked too about we're going to save. We'll save the
and
chat because there's a bunch of there's a bunch of links in here, and so Peter, I think you get it, or you can download it as well too. I'll send it to you. So we'll try to put that onto the site along with the link to the YouTube video. The YouTube thing should be up probably sometime tomorrow.
yeah,
So hopefully everyone gets a look at that, and yeah, let us know other things. This is our summer. We're just throwing different things together. So if you have any things you're interested in,
if
give us
we got too
ideas.
deep, let us know.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks everyone for joining us. If you're here for the first time, we hope you come back and good to see all our regulars as well too. So we're gonna meet three third Tuesday usually. So
Usually, yeah, third Tuesday of the month.
third
Yeah.
Tuesday of the month. That seems to work
Hey, Elise, good to see you.
usually. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Take
All
care.
right.
See you. Bye.